Hey, what's good everyone? Look, Westman here. As the title suggests, this is going to be my seasonal startup video. We don't take the ice out every season. Like I said in previous videos, once every 3, 4, 5 years. So we really don't really have a startup because we really have to shut down. So this is kind of new to me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover, I guess it's especially important, especially at this time of year, but what's happened lately in recent events in the news, that a lot of people's machines are down for extended periods of times, usually at least at our rink or typically at rinks. Shouldn't really say typically, but our rink, if we did take the ice out, 3 weeks tops, 4 weeks maybe. That's the longest I've ever seen our ice out. So your machine's not down for 3, 4, 5 months like a lot of people's machines were this time around. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover what I'm gonna do. And to be honest, you probably can hear the hockey pucks. I've already done most of the stuff. There's still a few things I need to do on the machine. And that's kind of really depend on how much money we have right now, and I'll talk about that here a little bit later. But I've already done a bunch of things on the machine to get it ready to go. So basically how I'm going to work this, I already have several videos on how to do a lot of things I'm going to refer to, like the greasing checklist, tightening the auger chain, down pressure, things like that. So I'm going to refer to those things and put descriptions down below or throw the box up in the top there, whatever is the best thing to do. I'm not going to go through. It's going to just be a waste of everyone's time and just not really efficient use of time for me to go through and just grease everything and do the down pressure and auger tension and things like that. I'm just going to show you, point to what I did and what you should do, then go through. And if anything I missed, because there's some things that I normally probably wouldn't cover just because we don't take the asset every year, I'm going to go through and basically go through. I'm going to go through Zamboni's checklist or their video that they put out, because they put a season video out and there's some things on there I probably would have overlooked because we don't pull the ice out every year. There's just some things that just I normally wouldn't have thought of. So basically I was going to go through and show you what I did with the machine, point to the things that should be done, and go ahead and comment below if you felt like I missed anything, because that's always important with your machines, because like we don't have battery powered machines, so there's some things on there I'll make reference to. But for your battery powered machine drivers, if there's something I miss, go ahead and comment below. We'll add that to the mix. And one more thing before we get going here, I don't know how to approach this subject because I don't know. I just don't know how to approach this subject. But you know what? There are things on the machine that need to be fixed that we just don't have the money for. So I'm going to point to things out that still need to be fixed, as well as things that probably should be fixed, you know, in an ideal situation. And for example, wheel bearings. I've had on the old 500 over here, I had the wheel bearings when I was driving the machine. I had the wheel right here start wobbling during my ice resurfacings. And there's nothing, you know, more unsettling. There's a lot of unsettling things in the world, but there's nothing more disconcerting than seeing a wheel just wobble as you're driving down the rink. And I think I had like 2 or 3 more laps to go, but I don't think I'm gonna finish this. If I tried to, who knows? I think it could fall off. So that, you know, things like that, it's probably better to replace that before it breaks. And now is probably a great time since we're down and it's the machine 7, 8 years old now. I don't know. You know, I really don't know the answers to that with rinks that are supported by municipalities like cities or counties or university ran rinks or rinks with deep pockets. That stuff is really easy to do, but rinks like us, like preventive maintenance is definitely the way to go. You want to fix things before they break. So, you know, we go like down to the augers over here, as well as the lift bushings and leaf springs. Like there's things like that that wear out that should be replaced before they break. There's other things, you know, starters and alternators and again, wheel bearings. There's things that, you know, yeah, if you had the money, keep one on the shelf, I guess, so you have it here. If it does break, you could swap it out real quick. But we're really not in a position just to take this machine from top to bottom and just replace things, just because. Keep that in mind that, you know, yeah, we want to fix things before they break. Hands down, that's the way to go. All right, I think I'm babbling too long about that, so let's go ahead and get right into this. So basically, for our machine here, let me get my notes, because I got some notes here. I'm not going to lie. All right, so no in particular order here. I don't think there's really any order importance here, because Zamboni listed order parts as the first thing to do. And yeah, that definitely makes sense. You want to order parts ahead of time so they're here when you get the machine ready to go. But again, we're not in that situation, so no order here. I'm just gonna throw it out just as my memory did it. But basically, you just want to go through, and I think one of the basic things you should do first is just grease the heck out of the thing. You got your daily, your monthly, your weekly. Can't forget the weekly, your daily, weekly, monthly greasing, your semi-annually, and your annually grease. Even though it's only been, it hasn't been a year, go through your annual checklist and semi-annual checklist just to make sure that there's anything that you missed or anything that didn't get checked last year. Just go through and hit that, and that will cover it. Again, I'm not going to go through the daily, the weekly, or the monthly greasings because I already did a video on that, and that's just kind of basic stuff. You can see all the grease certs there, as well as in those checklists, you're looking at the down pressure on the leaf springs, on the conditioner there, as well as the blade. Now, I'll tell you what, like, I already replaced these, the springs and the bushings, and did the tension 6 months ago. So I don't think we're quite ready for me to readjust the down pressure on these springs. I'm already cutting the ice already, and everything's looking good. Okay, I can tell you what, these bolts right here, these things don't move. So you got those things set, off my mind, what is that, 4 turns or something? They're not moving. I can see these ones on the conditioner, 1 3/4 to 3 turns is what's recommended. I can see maybe going down a quarter turn here pretty soon, just because those springs kind of wear out over time. So I could see that needs to be done here soon, but I don't think we're at that point yet for this machine. And a lot of these things is your machine dependent on when's the last time you did maintenance to your machine, the last time you replaced the springs. Those springs are 6 months old. They're not 3 years old, 4 years old. So I think we're good to go on that one. I did have to tighten the auger chain. I pulled that thing off. The chain was pretty loose. Tightened the chain up. The belt was good. I already did a video again on those things, so you go ahead and check those videos out. I'm not going to show you how to tighten the tension on the auger chain. Just going to point some things out. Keep it kind of general right here. You want to check your fuels and you have gasoline. You may want to check your gasoline, propane, and natural gas. I don't think that really spoils. We're running the machine quite a bit during the off season, once a week, so the fuel is getting kind of recirculated. And by now, we've been through both tanks. When we did the flood and stuff, we went through the tanks, so there's no worry about that. As far as the water goes here, your wash water and your ice making water, that's a good time. You see the ice, the tank light there. I got a video coming on that one here that probably will come out before this video because it was a shorter view, easier to do. But that tank light, I like that tank light. But anyway, you got your tanks here. Probably a good idea to flush those tanks out. Couldn't hurt. Stick a hose in there, flush them out. And back here, I got the white towel in here right now because I couldn't find a black one. I thought I had to order one, but when I dug through the parts over there, because we do have a leaky water valve right here. That's one of the things that we need to fix is the valve here in the water. When I went and looked for a valve in my little parts bin, thankfully I had a valve and I found a black towel. So we're good to go on that. I was hoping I had a squeegee in there on the bottom and do 3 things at once, but that's not gonna happen. It wasn't there. I'm gonna order some parts. I wanna order the squeegee. That's one of the things I think needs to be replaced. That's one of a few things that need to be replaced. So luckily we have a valve, we have a black towel, and you wanna inspect that squeegee down there. Ours is, I looked at it, it's not looking too bad. It's definitely worn, but there's no like, oh my God, that's bad spot. So you definitely want to inspect your squeegee down there. And I'll just, I can look at it right here, just if you don't know what I'm talking about. This little squeegee right here. It's not too bad a condition, so we're going to leave it on there for now. But when I do order some parts, that's one of the things I'm going to order is a new squeegee. Actually, let's come back over here before we start talking about the engine. Since we're in the conditioner here, I want to talk about the wash water system. One thing you should do is inspect the wash water, not the pump itself, but the impeller, to make sure it's not burnt up. If you have the blue one, you're probably fine, but the black one tends to break down much quicker than the blue one. The blue one is soaked in oil, so it's a little more forgiving. If you run it dry or if you use it to remove excess water off the ice, you may want to use the blue one versus the black one. As well as if you have any issues or suspect that if you're not recovering a lot of your water, I would look at your intake here and make sure nothing's clogging it. I've had a piece of sock tape sucked up in the intake here, and actually it made it as far as the impeller here. So if you have any issues with your wash water system not recovering all its water, because I think you lose probably about 20% of it. If you're losing like most of it or half it, you may want to look at your impeller, as well as maybe there's a clog in your system here. And up here in the wash water basket, or the mesh bag that we use now, I took this out and I rinsed it out really good. There was a big pile of stuff in the bottom of it, at this bag right here. I like the basket, I like the bag over the basket. If you have the basket, you know, you're fine. You know, it's certainly works and stuff. Just make sure you clean it out. This outer bag right here, you can't really clean that. I took it out and kind of hosed it off a little bit, but this inner one right here cleans out really good. I probably end up replacing the outer one probably at the end of the year. That's your wash water system there. Just inspect it, make sure there's no clogs in it. So as far as the engine goes, let's come back over here to the engine. Check the coolant here. The coolant maybe looks a little low to you guys, but it's cold right now, so it usually runs about top of this line right here when the engine's hot. So you could add a little coolant in there, but that's the mark I made years ago, and it kind of fluctuates up and down above or below that mark depending on how hot or warm the engine is, or hot or cold the engine is. So now you can put a little more coolant in there. It couldn't hurt. There's your alternator right there. You know, that's something probably is going to fail here pretty soon, if that's not the second alternator already. I don't think it is. I know on the other one over there I replaced the alternator a few times, but that's something that you can buy here locally at an auto store. So it's not a huge deal. It's maybe something that you probably should do some investigation to make sure you have the part number and you can get one here pretty quick. If you're somewhere isolated or out in boonies or somewhere, it may be a good idea to have an alternator on the shelf if you know yours is a few years old. And it's one thing that we need to do probably, because I'm looking at the radiator here, probably what a good time to do it, and maybe I'll have time to do it here soon, is to flush the cooling system. I never really flushed the cooling system on this unit, so I think it's probably time to flush the cooling system on this. Not critical, but I think by the end of the year, I probably should just flush out really quickly there. And on the center machine over here, you got your air filter right there, you got your fuel filter right there. Your gasoline power machines, you're gonna have a little bit different kind of fuel filter, and of course your battery power machines, you're not gonna have one. But our machine right here, the propane, this is what the fuel filter is, and this is the original one, so I think it's probably about time to replace it. I don't know, going on 7-8 years now, I think it's probably about time to replace it. I'll throw it on the list, but a little bit lower, because it's not really giving us any issues, so to say, but given the age, it's probably better to replace it sooner than later. As well as the air filter here. I replaced this thing a few years back. I think the air, well, first of all, this right here is not really the intake. The intake is back here. There's all these little slits. I'll take a picture of that with the light so you guys can see that a little bit better. But I replaced this thing a few years back. The air in the ice rink, I think, is much cleaner than where your car drives around the outside. You got pollen and debris flying around. And the ice rink has a dehumidifier that kind of moves air around. It kind of helps kind of filter it a little bit. So I don't really worry about the air filter so much, but how I kind of see it on the motor, if you check your air filter, your fuel filter, as well as your spark plugs, and I don't want to get into cap and rotor, because that machine over there has a cap and rotor, as well as one coil, whereas this machine right here has a coil over, where we're at, over each spark plug. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, the coil packs. I don't want to get into that. Kind of backtrack here. If you take care of your air filter, your fuel filter, your spark plugs, as well as your liquids, your oil, your filter, as well as your coolant, you're gonna be covering most of it as far as your engine. As well as you want to take a look at your belts over here. You may have 1 or 2 belts, but check and see if they're worn, and check the deflection, how tight they are. On this engine, there's only 1 belt, and use the alternator to adjust the tension on it. So that's something to look for. As well as I go through and tighten bolts on the motor, because the motor does vibrate as it runs, especially this heat shield right here. These bolts have a tendency to kind of come loose a little bit. You could hear it before you usually notice it. So I just go through, every so often and tighten these bolts really quick. And it's probably a good rule of thumb just to do it around the motor, on the converter here, as well as the lockout, the bracket that attaches to the motor, and top to bottom of the machine. Just go through tightening bolts, make sure everything looks good. You can see that certain marks they put on the machine, like right here, like you could tell that these ones haven't moved at all. So you probably don't have to worry about some of them, but ones around the heat shield there, I definitely would take care of. Just just poke around your machine, take a look to see if there's any loose bolts. But I think I covered the basics on the engine here. If you hit those things, I think you should be good to go. Now, as far as the hydraulic filters, we got 2 of them. We got one right there. We got another one that's located underneath this part right here. To access it, you got to take the back of you got to take your propane tanks off and its back off. And you got one sitting right there. Now, I love to hear people's comments about the hydraulic filters, how often you change them. I know on heavy equipment, they probably should be changed every year. In this machine, I've only done it once. So that hydraulic filter over there, that is a pain in the butt to get it on. Like, it's a huge, long filter, and it's a spot where it's really hard to get to. You gotta take the tanks off and the back plate there that holds the tanks on. And the threads are so fine, it's really hard to screw that filter back on. So that's one thing that this machine, and I do have both filters in stock, so that's something I probably should do really soon. Change the filters out. That's something I'm gonna do, put that in the list. So another thing, come over here. And as far as talking about hydraulics, that's one thing you should do. I'm gonna circle back around over here, because the only hydraulic leak that I think I've had 2 hydraulic leaks, but the only significant one where it kind of bursted on the ice is where one of these hoses was on the 500, got pinched between the filter, which you see it right here, and the frame of the body, and it wore a hole in the hose and squirted out. So that was a little concerning to see a bunch of red stuff on the ice, because I thought I ran someone over. But it's a good idea to go through and check your hydraulic lines. I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. I'm just kind of doing this off the cuff here. It still needs to be wiped down here a little bit. So you want to check your hydraulic lines, make sure there's nothing that's worn through. Like you see right here, I know Zamboni kind of recommends or discourages doing this type of stuff now, putting a zip tie right over the hydraulic line, because this could vibrate and just kind of wear a hole in the hose there, and that's kind of what happened on the other side. Typically what they do now is they just take some spare hose right there, slice some hose up, wrap a piece of hose around it, then you zip tie it. I've done that in a 500 in a few spots. I think this right here, electrical cable is one thing, but this hose is right here. I think that's a no-no. I don't know. I think Zamboni probably would discourage you from doing this now. I'm kind of surprised that that's actually like this on a newer machine, but not a huge deal, but something to go through. Check your hydraulic hoses, make sure there's no leaks, no potential leaks, or no hoses or anything chafing hoses and things like that. So all right down here, this is one major issue on the machine that needs to be fixed. I'm actually going to call Zamboni to figure out the best way to approach this. But right here, there's a little leak. You can see it seeping out a little bit, little hydraulic fluid. And I also noticed a brush is kind of sitting on the ground if it's been sitting for a while. Now, I noticed it about a month before we started putting ice back in. I don't know if it was happening before then. We just didn't notice it because you're moving the machine back and forth so much. The machine, I should say, and the board brush itself. The machine was started so many times or so much frequently that I don't think it had time to go on the ground. But anyway, I think that definitely that this needs to be fixed, because you don't want any kind of hydraulic fluid dripping on the ice. One little drip can make a big long streak. So I don't know if I need to tighten this right here, because it looks like this is a little coupling between this manifold right here, which is for the board brush. These are test ports, I believe. And this hose right here, it looks like a little elbow. I don't know if I need to tighten this to this or this to this. I'm definitely gonna call Don about that before I approach it. And if I need to order a part, I don't actually think I really even need to order a part. I think I just need to probably take it off and retighten it or something. But I don't know if I can tighten it if this test port's in the way. So it's gonna be a little tricky one right here, but it needs to be fixed. I'm just gonna continue to wipe it down once a day to make sure nothing gets on the ice. It's not a huge leak, but that's something I want to take care of. That's one of the things that needs to be fixed on this machine. Not a huge deal, but it's something that if you don't fix this thing and you get something else you don't fix, you get something else don't fix, that stuff starts adding up, then you have a piece of shit of a machine. So we don't want this machine to be a piece of shit, so I'm going to fix that thing as soon as I can. Moving around to over here, this side of the machine, because I've had problems with the exhaust before, so you want to make sure your exhaust, there's no holes in it, that the brackets are nice and tight. We've had the brackets break before and the exhaust rattling down there. That's not good. So while you're greasing the drivetrain, look for other things underneath the machine that could be possible problems, hose leaks, rusty parts, anything like that that seems out of ordinary. Just kind of take a look for it. All right, so other things on the machine here that I've missed. I'm trying to think. Things that I missed besides checking belts and hoses and clamps, and go through your electrical system, your battery, make sure your battery's been charged. If you haven't charged it or haven't kept the machine running, charge your batteries. Our edger over here, I did a video on this, me getting this thing ready. Maybe I'll put that thing out, we'll see. Wasn't too exciting. But our battery was pretty much bone dry in the water there, so I had to fill the water up before I put a charge on it. So if your machine has those acid batteries that take water, and a lot of maintenance I hear for those type of batteries, check the water on your batteries, make sure they're charged. I really don't know a whole lot about that kind of system, so I don't want to talk about it, but just make sure you follow your batteries manufacturer's recommendations, Zamboni recommendations on how to maintain your batteries, their water levels. Same thing with the floor Zam, which is not back here, and the scissor lift. I always have to check the battery levels on, or the water levels on those things, just make sure there's enough water in the batteries. Before I charge the floor Zam or before I charge the scissor lift, I always check the level in the batteries just to make sure. Just, you know, same thing on your Zamboni here. Let me go through my list right here to see if there's anything that I kind of missed right here. I think tire pressure was one of them. Check your tire pressure in the machine. Make sure 70 to 75 PSI in the machine right there. I'm gonna go through this list right here. I kind of gathered while I was watching the Zamboni season startup video. So some of these may repeat. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna go through what they have, just to make sure that we've got everything covered for everyone's situation here. So basically, again, order parts. Zamboni recommends order parts. You may want to go through your machine first to find out what you need to order first. But yeah, I think that's great. You want to order your parts so you have them here before the season starts. Inspect safety levels, review operation video. And I said review operation manual, but go ahead and review the videos too. Why not? Some people are more visually type of learners than they are on paper. Circle check. I didn't talk about the circle checks. That's a video I need to do here in the future. Go through your circle checks, and that's basically almost like your daily, weekly kind of stuff. Just go around your machine, make sure everything's in place. There's nothing falling off the machine, you know, just anything that stands out. I think the circle checks are more, you know, between ice cuts and between days and stuff like that. But it's always good to review any kind of stuff you have, any checklists you have, just to make sure you got everything covered. So you want to hit your circle checks, check all fluids, check your air filter, check your fuel filter, especially after your machine's been stored for a long time. You definitely want to check that kind of stuff. Reconnect any battery cables, inspect your battery water, you know, fluids in your water. All right, assess the down pressure on your machine. I haven't done that yet. I haven't done a video on that. There is a video about assessing the down pressure on your machine. Honestly, I'm a little scared to find out that ours is not good, so I think that's probably why I haven't done it yet. But that's a video I should do here. There is a video on how to do that. When I put your blade back on, I think that's pretty straightforward. Inspect your wash water impeller. I talked about the basket, but inspect your wash water impeller. Make sure it's good to go. Leaf springs. I already talked about the leaf springs. You want to check the down pressure on your leaf springs. Your auger chain, make sure your auger chain is tight, has the right deflection. Inspect your spray bar, inspect your squeegee, inspect your towel. I already kind of covered that kind of stuff. I didn't really go over the spray bar, but one thing I want to do one of these days is take the end of the spray bar off on each end, the caps, and just kind of flush it out, kind of clean it out maybe a little bit the best I can. I don't know if I could get a brush in there somehow, but that's probably something I'll eventually do. Now the things in this machine, I already kind of covered it, the things I need to do. There's a part on the board brush arm, a little elbow that's leaking, as well as the tire wash. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a separate video, but our tire wash is kind of coming on and off. And I'll talk about that accessory here in a different video because I kind of found out what's going on with it. There's a wire that's kind of being pinched, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's short now, but it's causing the tire wash not to turn on unless I kind of jiggle that wire. So I'm going to do a separate video about that, but that's something I thought I needed a whole new pump. So luckily it's just the wire being pinched in the machine between the panel and the pump. So I'll kind of cover that here. But that's one of the things that we need to fix on top of the, you can see it right there that this valve right here is leaking. And this is not good because if this valve leaks, you go to park your machine on the ice to close some doors. That's not good. And there's some times where it seems like it's leaking a little bit out of the valve here too, as well as this spot right here. I do have one of these valves in stock, so I'm gonna do that separate video on that. It's not terribly hard to replace this thing, but that definitely needs to be fixed. That's a couple of things on this machine that needs to be fixed. You know, you got the squeegee, the valve, board brush, wash water, as well as I think we need to do a tune-up on the machine, and a couple other little things like this. You know, I can't really remember right now, but there's a couple other small things like tires, are not small, huge things. Tires, Zamboni tires. We need Zamboni tires so bad. You can see, is that really a rock sitting there? That is a rock. So, and that's one thing about the tire wash system. That's why I want to do a separate video about that, because the tire wash is really beneficial for our type of rink that we drive outside in depth snow. But you see the studs on these tires, man, these things are so loose. And they stuck another row of studs on here. I think one of these rows, I think the outside one was the original one, but they added studs to this. The tread is fine on these tires. The tread's always fine. The studs is wear out. So maybe they could restud these tires, and maybe that's a video I should do, a separate video about studded tires, because I know you could buy things that you can stud your own tires. I think that may be where we are right now. We need to replace some of these studs, because some of them are there to just really loose. I've already done the musical chair swap with this machine and this machine, swapping tires back and forth. You can see this tire back here. It's a little bit different. The studs are a little smaller. And let's go check these ones out over here, because I think these ones are even more different, that these ones are even smaller and flatter. So the studs on your tires, I mean, we need new studded tires, or new studs on our tires, however you say it. That's one thing that's probably the most major thing besides that leak right there that we need to do on this machine, is change the tires. As well as, like I said, the hydraulic filters probably should be changed, and a couple other little things. All right, go ahead and comment below if you felt like I missed anything. There's so many little things on this machine. I think the best thing to do is to go through, again, your checklist, daily, weekly, monthly. That will cover probably 90% of it. Like us, you don't have a lot of money. We're gonna have to make a plan to say we need to spend this much this week, this much next week, and some of the stuff may not be fixed until to the winter time, December, January, when you start getting more money rolling in here. So go ahead and leave a comment below. Again, if I felt like I missed anything or didn't cover something, I really appreciate everyone's feedback. It's really important, not just to me, but to everyone else who comes to this channel and watches and tries to learn something. To hear other drivers and rinks' perspective and how they do things is so helpful and beneficial to me, especially because we're so located. We're not up in Alaska, but we're pretty far from the next rink. So I feel like a lot of times I'm just trying to figure this stuff out on myself, and I think it would be a lot better, and I will learn a lot quicker if I had these videos for me to look at when I was younger, trying to piece it all together. That's all we're trying to do, piece it all together and make a good sheet of ice. So other than that, I don't think I can add too much more to the conversation here, so we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. As always, hope you learned something, and like the local Iceman says, stay cool.